Killer, Dipset, Check my stats, man. 78 I got to be the best living, man. You already know. Like Alex Trebek, you're in jeopardy. Yes, sir, we got the recipe. Give you a tech, but nope, not a referee. Like Wyclef, I'm a refugee. Broly wear cocky, don't play hockey, but have your mom in goalie gear. See the ice, grab the stick.
Welcome. You're now tuned into episode 2 of the SFG Sports Podcast. A lot of topics to get into today. We're going to break down the Clippers' loss and what they need to do to improve their team. We're going to talk about the outlook of the West Finals. Also, we'll get into a look of the Celtics and Heat, talk about Game 2 and moving forward. And then we'll talk about the kind of topic I thought that was hot today, that broke today, the Maya Moore and Jonathon Irons story. And then lastly, we'll get into some music topics. We'll talk about Versuz and what I would like to see next and the recommended music of the weeks. So, without further ado, let's get right into it, man. So, the Clippers, man. I, like everybody else, right? I was like everybody else, man. I had the Lakers and Clippers in the Western Conference Finals. And to my much, not really dismay, because I didn't have any money on it or a dog in the fight per se, just besides just wanting to be right, the Nuggets were able to beat them out. And if you look at it from just a holistic perspective, the Denver Nuggets beat the Clippers because they were a better cohesive basketball team. It didn't have anything to do with talent. It didn't have anything really to do with X and O's, even though there's a couple things that I'm going to get into here shortly on the court that I saw. It really just came down to a team that knew how to play together, that trusted each other more, that was hungrier to win, and they were able to come out there and get the job done. Whereas if you look at the Clippers, you know, there wasn't any real cohesion with everybody as a whole from a teammate perspective. And so I would say Denver is in that, you know, the Clippers have more talent. Denver just was a better team, right? So the issue with the Clippers to me is the fact they did not have a true point guard to help them when they got into ruts offensively to be able to find guys' shots. If you look at how that team was ran, they really got the ball to Kawhi on his sweet spots, whether it be on the elbow, mid-post area, high post area, where he liked to really get into his jab step series and get into his one-on-one series. And then they would let Paul George get into some screen and roll game. They would get basically a drive and kick basketball team and a pick and roll dominant basketball team, which is fine, right? A lot of NBA teams do that, but the difference for the Clippers was that when the going got tough, there was nobody that could just really say, okay, let me get the ball, let me come off this screen here, and I'm gonna run this action so that way I know the opposite wing's gonna have to help off for me when I collapse the defense. Let me get Paul George an easy ready-made bucket. Let me get Kawhi Leonard an easy bucket because it's going hard for him to doubling him. Let me get inside and get just an easy layup for Zubac. Let me get something easy for Montrezl Harrell. There was really nobody who was on that team that has a want to set the table, right? So when you look back at what happened with Boston when they microwaved their championship over a summer like the Clippers were trying to do, that Doc Rivers was able to lead. He had actual leadership on the court in Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce and Ray Allen. Those guys were actual leaders. They were vocal. And you had a point guard in Rajon Rondo that all he lived to do was to call plays, get guys involved, get guys touches, and run the team. He didn't care about scoring or anything like that. And when you look at what the Clippers were lacking, they were lacking a guard that can knock down the open jumper and run the team. And this is really not a referendum on Patrick Beverley per se, but Patrick Beverley is not a traditional point guard in the sense of he's going to run your team, he's going to run your action and lead you on both sides of the floor. He's a really good role player that can fill a role, but I don't think anybody that's watching would say, yo, Pat Bev is the type of point guard that you want to be your starting point guard on a championship team to run your show. Because if you look at what happened to them offensively the last 2 games, the offense bogged down, the shots got harder, everything was predictable, and because of that, and Denver got going defensively, it was a wrap. And it just snowballed on him. The fact that Joker's so big, he played a heck of a series, man. I mean, I'm so impressed with him. It's been an argument whether or not he's the best 5 in the league. I think he's staked his claim right now as the best 5 in the league. I don't, for as talented as Joel Embiid is, he's inconsistent in terms of being able to win and be dominant all the time, whereas you know what you're going to get from Jokic day in and day out. And the level of passing, I mean, he's able to do the ball movement that Denver had. Denver beat them offensively because they were willing to move the basketball. After Michael Porter said what he said, you notice, you know what I'm saying, his impact might not have been the best, but they started moving the basketball to a higher degree, and shots started coming easier for guys. Paul George couldn't do nothing with Jamal Murray. And the reasoning is once you get going and get in the rhythm for moving in basketball, everybody's touching it, everybody has a feel, everybody's involved. That now your main players can eat easier because you have to respect everybody on the floor. And that's the interesting part about what Denver did. So in my opinion, right, Doc Rivers should be on the hot seat going into the next season. Now, I don't think he should be fired after this season. I think with COVID-19 and the way the season kind of messed up, there wasn't really an opportunity to gel. But you can't not get out of the second round with that roster there. Because even with all that I said about Denver, the Clippers weren't supposed to lose this series. Let's be clear. Between Kawhi Leonard level of play, Lou Williams level of play, and the rest of the role players level of play, they should have been able to win the series. Now, let's talk about, before I get into Doc Rivers, let's talk about Paul George, right? Well, I take it back. Let me finish my point on Doc Rivers, right? So Doc Rivers' issue is offense, and I forever believe that's always been his issue, is his offensive system. When he had the big 3 in Boston, they ran floppy actions and pick actions for Ray because he had to do that. They ran certain pin down plays to get Paul Pierce the ball on the elbows where he liked it, or Paul would just go get his. And at that stage in KG's career, KG wasn't looking to really dominate in a scoring capacity offensively, but they would get him some post touches when the time saw fit, and some pick and pops, mainly with Rondo. That's where he made his bread and butter, was off pick and pops with Rondo. But if you look at that team, that offense ran through Rondo, and as they aged, they ran everything with Rondo. Right? And so he leaves Boston. He gets the Clippers gig. They have Chris Paul and Blake Griffin. And it's the same thing. Everything was ran through Chris Paul. All of the screen and roll actions. Everything was designed between him and Blake. They would run JJ off some pin downs and some floppies and some single doubles to get him some shots. And they would work the ball around that. But everything was Chris Paul based. They never even really was unable to unlock DeAndre Jordan's immense talent. DeAndre Jordan should have been able to turn into somebody who could get you 15 points off of dunks, different cuts, off of dunks, layups, different types of cross-screen cuts, pick and rolls, different types of things where you could have unleashed some of his offensive potential. Now, granted, he couldn't make free throws, but in terms of just how the plays were run, you don't see multipleness from Doc Rivers' team. You don't see a lot of just different things you have to defend, and then the ball tends to get stuck in one location, and it becomes easy to defend them. That's why in the playoffs they struggle, because, okay, now as a coach, if I'm playing you X amount of times, I could game plan and figure out what you like, what you don't like from an offensive perspective. Then now once I tune in on that, now I could force you into things because you're not throwing anything new at me because you're not that multiple offensively. Right? That's what made the Warriors so hard to defend, because the Warriors ran a free-flowing motion. They would mix in some ISOs and mix in a lot of screen and roll action and some veer action, but everything was pick to picker. Everybody's running off actions. Everybody's moving. Everybody's cutting. Everybody's a threat on the floor. The Clippers didn't have that. So that's where I think Doc Rivers has to come in the offseason and fix some things. And he has to become a better leader because his two stars aren't really leaders. Kawhi Leonard is a silent assassin. He leads by example. He's gonna come in and work hard, but then at the same time, he takes nights off. Whether he's unhealthy or whatever it is with the rest that he needs. It's hard to sometimes respect a guy that you don't relate to, you can't have conversations with. And then Paul George, we respect mental health here. I mean, we understand it's a lot going on in today's world. Believe you me, we understand and get that. But for you not to be able to just hit the rim on a miss at the end of a game, that means you mentally checked out. So whatever he had going on off the floor, whether he was, depressed or dealing with family issues, whatever was going on in the bubble, that's not an excuse for him to be able to play the way he played. He turned it around after the first series a little bit, but he slowly but surely, as the pressure got tighter, it got worse. You know what I mean? And if you ask me, Paul George hasn't been the same since he broke his leg in the playoffs, and he hasn't been the same since he changed his number. Ever since he changed into PG13, when he gets to the playoffs, there's no such thing as playoff P. And all the jokes are well-deserved. Playoff P, Pandemic P, you know what I'm saying, George Paul. All of those nicknames, he deserved it because at the end of the day, he didn't perform to the level that you needed to perform. And he deserves all the criticism he's getting on Instagram because there's no way that he should have been that soft. You know what I mean? He wasn't rated PG-13. He was rated G. He was a Disney movie out there, like super soft, super charming, and I just can't get down with that. That guy's way too talented. Way too talented. He was getting dogged by Jamal Murray. And so moving right along into the next series, speaking of Jamal Murray is going to have to continue his hot streak if they're going to be able to do anything with the other team in LA, the main team in LA, the real team in LA, the Lakers, led by LeBron James and Anthony Davis. They're playing at a really, really high level ever since Rondo came back. I love the way he's able to get LeBron off the ball more, allow LeBron to just focus on other things, get everybody touches, get the ball moving, and get everything going. Now Caruso can play a role that he's used to. There's not as much pressure on Caruso when he's playing. I love the big man rotation they have with JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard. They're a really good basketball team, and I think the matchup between them and Denver basically comes down to Denver doesn't have anybody to bother LeBron. So if LeBron decides to dominate this series, it's over for Denver. There's nobody on Denver's roster that can bother LeBron James at all. Period. You what you gonna do? Put Grant on him? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's nobody there, right? And then Paul Millsap at the 4 and Anthony Davis at the 4. I believe that's a mismatch. Denver's greatest hope offensively is going to end up being if Joker can continue playing at a dominant level, but he's going to have to take it up another level. So he's going to have to dominate JaVale McGee. He's going to have to dominate Dwight Howard. He's going to have to force double teams so now you can get the ball back moving and find Gary Harris on the perimeter for an open shot. You can find Monte Morris for an open jump shot. You can find Grant for an open jump shot. You can make shots easier for Jamal Murray. Because I think Jamal Murray is going to have a different type of series in terms of matchups because they could throw bigger guards at him that should be able to make it harder. I mean, Rondo's a bulldog defensively. I think Caruso's going to work really hard defensively. When you come off the bench, you got a guy like a Deion Waiters you could throw at him as well, just make him have to guard offensively for 3 to 5 minutes at a time. I don't think Deion Waiters is going to get that much minutes. But they have just multiple guys to throw him. You could put LeBron on him if you want to. You could put Danny Green on him if you want to. There's just so many things that they could throw at him. And he's young and growing. And we'll see if the moment's too big for him. I think he's turning into a star, all-star level talent. But it's going to be interesting to see how that matchup sort of unfolds in terms of the way that Denver spaces the floor, how they're able to use Jokic's ability because he's such an excellent passer, and that ability opens up the rest of the floor for everybody else. So, and then you got Michael Porter Jr., If he steps up, he can make shots, and the more and more he matures and gets better, Denver's going to be a problem in the future. But I think Denver's just a year away, man. They're a year and a half away from really being the team that we think they could be in terms of challenging in the West. I think between them next year, Golden State coming back next year, the Clippers coming back next year, and the Lakers coming back next year, it's going to be really, really tough to come out of the West next year. Really, really tough. But as far as the series go, I really feel like the Lakers should win this in 6. The Nuggets are hot, but I just refuse to believe that if the Lakers was up 3-1 on the Nuggets, that they was going to let the Nuggets come back and beat them like that. I just don't see it. I just don't see it. It doesn't add up to me. It doesn't add up to me. So we're gonna go with the Lakers in 6. And we'll come back and revisit that on another episode of the pod as that goes. When I come to you guys again next week on the pod, we'll talk about it, see how that series is going. But I got the Lakers in 6. So going into the Lakers rival, the team across the way, the Boston Celtics versus the Miami Heat, another excellent series of basketball, and I really believe that this series is going to go 7. I originally had my pick coming out the East of the Boston Celtics. I really liked what Tatum was doing. I love Jaylen Brown. I thought Kemba was going to be the type of leader that they needed, and he was going to be able to play clutch in the fourth quarter. And then Gordon Hayward was coming right along, going into in the bubble before he got hurt. So I liked what they was doing, and I was expecting him to come back actually now, but apparently he's still going to be out for another week or two, so that's going to hurt them. But I think that prior to the run Miami went on, I didn't see anybody beating Boston. So I'm still going to stick with my pick. I got Boston in 7, but Miami has been so good for one reason and one reason only in the playoffs. They all have bought into their roles. They've bought into their roles. And that's a really important thing on the team. What's so underestimated on a team, especially in basketball, is personal goals. Because everybody that plays ball competitively has an ego, right? And so when you have an ego and you've been working on your game your whole life, and you think you're good at something, right? And you think that you have an ability to score, or you think you have an ability to shoot, or you feel like you're a star, or whatever the case may be, that can get in the way of what the team needs, right? Depending on what type of team you're on and what the coach is asking of you. So when you're playing for the Miami organization, they're really a rigid organization in terms of their protocols. They have expectations of guys to be able to be in shape to a high level, guys to buy in defensively, guys to follow the scouting reports and be locked in. And that is the reason why Jimmy Butler chose to go to Miami and left Philadelphia, because of that reason. He wanted to be challenged by a coach. He wanted to have a coach with some common sense, a coach in an organization that was going to make sure guys are doing what they're supposed to do to win, and guys that are going to be able to come in there and compete. And if you look at what those guys are doing, they're coming in and competing. They're all buying into the defensive. You don't see a lot of defensive breakdowns on them when they're playing. You don't see a lot of pointing the fingers when somebody scores. You don't see somebody just letting somebody go in for the easy lay and not contesting, or going for the dunk like Bam Adebayo had the other night against Jason Tatum. That type of play, most guys, especially being up 2, would have said, let me just foul him, or let me just get out the way, let him have that, we could come down and score, especially in that moment. But he was able, because he had the intestinal fortitude and the will to win, and he's a dog, that he went out there and got the block. One of the most athletic blocks I've seen in an NBA game, honestly, to be able to go up that high. You met him at 12 feet high in the air and prevented him from tomahawking that thing down. Like, that was a really, really impressive play by Bam Adebayo. And So when you look at the cohesion that Jimmy has brought, Jimmy is an unselfish star. He doesn't really care about scoring. Now, when his matchup he has the matchup that he likes, then he's going to attack it. He's going to compete and do what he does and get to his spots. But for the most part, they run their actions, they run their pin downs, they try and get their shooters open, they try and get their shooters good looks. They allow Bam to be a facilitator and bring the ball up at points in time, or facilitate the offense from the top of the key so they can run they back screens and they pin downs and they backdoor cuts, right? And if you look at what they're able to do from when they get that original action, if they don't have that first action there, the guard is coming around, receiving the ball from Bam, and they're going right into another action, going right into a dribble handoff action, or right into a screen and roll action, and the offense is continually moving. That's why Jay Crowder's getting so many good shots. And he's the person you have to help off on that team on most times on the floor, because you don't want to help off Tyler Hero. You damn sure don't want to help off Duncan Robinson. Duncan Robinson is as pure a shooter as you'll find, and he's a dog as well. He's coming to knock that thing down. A lot of times you deal with shooters, and there could be a level of softness to them, a level of shookethness when they're playing against certain people. But those guys don't have that, man. Those guys are coming out and competing, and you got a Goran Dragic coming off the bench who's playing at a really high level. And before you know it, now you're looking at a team that's in the Eastern Conference Finals, and they might mess around and win. I mean, the momentum is on their side. Their major issue is they have a turnover problem just due to how the players on the floor are kind of built. Like Dragic has always had turnovers, and then when you look at the guys handling the ball, Jimmy Butler's not a point guard per se, where you wouldn't call him just the best ball handler in the world. He just knows how to play. Same thing with Adebayo. He just knows how to play. Jay Crowder. All those guys are just really good ball players, so you let them rock out and do what they do. But that's why they have those issues of where they have turnovers and get kind of bogged down at times. But when they're all locked in, doing what they're supposed to do and playing unselfishly, that's why they're where they're at. And because they're so multiple defensively, you got Bam Adebayo who could switch out on a one, which is super unique for somebody who's 6'10". Well, he's probably around 6'9", but I'll give him 6'10", right? We're splitting hairs there. For a guy that's 6'10" to be able to do what he does and they maneuver him like a chess piece, then you got Crowder who could guard 1 through 4. You got Jimmy Butler who could guard 1 through 4, right? And then Tyler Hero, people talk about his offense, but he's out there strapping. Like, I got to give that kid credit. He's not out there being chump. He's competing defensively. And same thing with Duncan Robinson. You would think Duncan Robinson would get picked on, but he's out there competing. He's not a slouch defensively. He's not an all NBA player defensively, but he's out there competing. You know what I mean? And that's all you really ever want. So, like I said, I'm still going to stick with my pick of Boston, but as you can tell from what the analysis I just gave you, man, I really, really like Miami. I really, really like Miami, man. They're hard-nosed, they play for each other, and they're selfless. And speaking of being selfless, I don't know how many of you guys have been following it, but 2 years ago, Maya Moore, the great UConn basketball player, one of the all-time greats, probably second to Diana Taurasi ever to come out of UConn. She retired from the she took a hiatus from the WNBA to work on a social justice cause. And I wasn't super duper familiar in regards to the story. Besides, there's a guy who was in jail that wasn't supposed to be in jail, in prison, that wasn't supposed to be there, as many people are in today's society, as we all well know, and what's going on in today's world. And she wanted to fight for his cause. So you just respect that and you keep it moving. But then the story comes out today, and we get it. Go on Twitter and you see a clip from Good Morning America, and they're having a conversation about it, and they announced that they were married. And so my group chat caught wind of it, and we started having discussion. And then my brain immediately went to, I was like, whoa, look at God. Like, if you think about that, that was ordained. And whether you believe in God or a higher power, whatever you believe in, it just was ordained. And that led me to the question, would you sit down or endure a prison sentence or any type of punishment, right? That whatever you would deem a punishment, whether for me, if I had to march through the jungle and XYZ, or do anything, just jump out of a blimp, you know what I mean? Something silly like that. Or like my man did, he sat down for 23 years for something he didn't do, that he was acquitted of. And if at the end of that you found true love, would you do it? Right? Would you do it? Oh man, that's a beautiful question. I posed it on Twitter, so I put it at 6 months. Most people said no. But I gotta be honest, man. If you told me I had to sit in the jail for just 6 months, and I was gonna be blessed with the woman of my dreams, I probably would do it. I gotta be honest. I probably would do it, because that type of relationship that they were able to build over 13 years before she met him, because she met him in college, and then they just developed a friendship through there, and she was coming on visits, and then once she started taking things seriously, things went to another level. But think about the type of relationship they would have been able to build over those years, and how she basically held him down, and then paused her Hall of Fame career. Because let's be clear, Maya Moore wasn't just some run-of-the-mill basketball player. Maya Moore is the top of the top. She's probably, in the WNBA, she's probably the best WNBA player of all time. I know most people will bring up Diana Taurasi and Lisa Leslie, but I mean, when Maya Moore was playing, I mean, she was she was nice. So she put all that on hold, held him down, and then was able to get him out of jail. Of course, if I'm him, that's like, yo, shorty, I gotta put a ring on you. Like, you're not going nowhere. No way, I can't let it happen. You know what I mean? And she said it in the interview. She just felt that God was moving, and that it was meant to be, and that's what it is. So, God bless Jonathon Irons, man. I mean, he had to sit down for 23 years, man. That's, for something you didn't do, that's insane, man. That's tough. But I think if you asked him, would he do it over again if he knows he's going to have a woman of his dreams and somebody who he knows is riding for him the way she's riding for him, I think he might do it. Now, I wouldn't be able to say that. I'm not rocking for 23 years. That's crazy. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. But man, to be able to find something like that while you're going through your worst time, that's nothing but God, man, in my opinion. It's nothing but God, man. So, congrats to them on their union, man. And what a great story, because as we all know, 2020 hasn't had a lot of great stories, man. 2020 has just been blow after blow after blow. So I thought that was a really good story that came out, and congrats to Maya Moore and Jonathon Irons on their vows and all of that good stuff. So let's take it into, so off of love, right? So we just was talking about love. Let's take that into the music, man. So another passion of mine, man. If you know me, you know I listen to a lot of music, man. I've always fell in love with music, man, from the times when I was a kid, from listening to gospel music with my mom and my dad, to the jazz my dad used to play all the time, to to the oldies my mom used to play, whether it be the Commodores and the OJs and all of them guys, and then my dad loved Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes and Grover Cleveland and all that, to, you know what I mean, dealing with listening to stuff my uncle was listening to, getting exposed to the rap game, and just fell in love with listening to music, man. So so off of that conversation, I want to talk about the Versuz a little bit, man. So I want the platform itself, man. If you look at what Versuz is doing for artists, right? Look at a Patti LaBelle and Gladys Knight. Now, social media is driven by young people, by millennials, by people like us, and they were able to bring in about 6.5 million views to Gladys Knight and Patti LaBelle, right? And the current their market share of people who've listened to their music that you would call true fans is not us. They're our parents and our grandparents. But, you know, through social media and the promotion and what Versuz is built, of course, most of the culture tuned in. I know myself, I had it on in the background while I was watching the football game. And I tell you what, man, those two queens did their thing. There's nothing to even discuss. That wasn't even really a Versuz. That was just a celebration. And I'm glad that they're alive to be able to see how much love people have for them. So this is a really dope thing. But the greater conversation I want to have is how Versuz is showing the artists and people that are doing music the lack of need for the labels and the music industry in general, right? So this started because Swiss Beats and Timbaland were, you know, wanted to compete, right? They had beat battles and they did different things and they expounded on the idea and they kept it moving, right? And so obviously when you go into COVID-19, everybody's in the house, everybody's quarantined. So they figure out a way to give people some entertainment. And in that, right, they also figured out, oh, we're getting hundreds of thousands of views, a bunch of people tuning in. And after people are tuning in, oh, all these artists are starting to trend on the charts right after, right? And it was no doing of the label, no doing of anybody in the music industry. This is just our culture giving back to the people, and it exploded, right? And so when you look at it from a musical's perspective, in my opinion, in terms of how people, you know, getting bad record contracts, and I remember Brandy was saying there was a song she couldn't play just because of, you know, some contractual things, and she didn't own the music to be able to play it. It wasn't cleared to be able to play it. And the fact that you have a legacy act like Brandy who had to clear a record that she sang on, that's crazy. That's just insane to me. So a lot of these artists and stuff go through this all the time because the music industry is a pyramid scheme and you're never paid what you're worth. You're paid what you can negotiate. And because when you're coming out of these situations coming up, most everybody that coming out is broke. They offer you a deal that's more money than you ever seen in your life. You just sign a deal, not knowing you just signed away your masters, not knowing you signed away your publishing. And now with the invention of the 360 deal, now they're going to get part of your merch. They're going to get part of your tour money. They're going to get part of everything. And so I think the wave of what you're seeing now is, I think what a lot of people are going to start to realize is, man, you could just do it on your own and be independent. And if you are going to get a label deal, come into it with a partnership and make sure you have stuff to bring to the table and put some of your own money up once you start bringing money in off your music, and put your own money up. And that way you could enter a partnership with these labels, and then you can have negotiating power and be able to do some things. Because if you look at what Versuz is doing, I guarantee you Apple wrote them a nice check to bring to bring that to the Apple platform. Larry Jackson and them guys. Why? Because they're the culture. They're bringing in millions of views to a platform, and wasn't getting anything for it. So if I would have been Instagram, I would have figured out a way to make it happen. But Instagram fumbled the bag. Apple came in, so you still have it on Instagram, but now you have the Apple Music side, and Apple Music is doing way more views than Instagram is doing. And it speaks volumes when you value the culture and you treat it accordingly. You receive the benefits on the back end. So I love what Versuz is doing for a lot of these artists, a lot of these legacy acts, and I can't wait to see who they have next. I would love to see on the R&B side. I would love to see Queen Mariah versus Queen Janet. I think their catalogs match up nice. I think they both have the pop elements, the R&B elements, the vocal elements. I mean, I think that would really be a really good back and forth. In my opinion, Mariah Carey would take that, but I'm biased. I'm a really big Mariah Carey fan. Mariah Carey was my first crush back in the day, so it's not really too much you're gonna really tell me about Mariah Carey. So that's my bias that's coming out. But they obviously both are queens and have the catalog. So I think for far as the legends from the 90s, that's who I would want to kind of see for the R&B side. And then on the rap side, I want to see Missy Elliott get in the ring. I want to see Missy Elliott versus Busta Rhymes. I think they're similar type rappers. They're really similar type rappers. Both have club hits, pop hits, slow down records. They have everything you need. And Missy's pen has been over a lot of things. Her production has been there. And then Busta's career has been so long. He's been on hits after hits after hits. I think that would be a good rap battle, man, in terms of the verses. And there could be a really good back and forth. I think Missy would be comfortable. There wouldn't be any cattiness. I think it'd be a really good back and forth, honestly. When you look at their catalogs, you got the Break It Next to come on, and you got the Passive Cavassiers, and she gonna come on with Get Your Freak On, you know what I mean? Or I Can't Stand the Rain. She got a lot of hits, so I really think that those are the battles that I want to see there. And then my top 3 verses so far, I love the Kirk and Fred Hammond battle, man. The celebration. That came at a time where in the quarantine, I thought that was just a perfect Sunday afternoon, man. They had great music, man. TD Jakes blessed the whole thing, man. It was just a really good environment. So that was my favorite one. And I'm a gospel head, so those are my 2 favorite gospel artists. So I definitely was really tuned into that. Jadakiss and Fab was my second one. Those are some of my favorite rappers. And then just the theater of it, Kiss was wilding. He was Kiss was super nice on the on that stage. And Fab's DJ lost it for him. You can't tell me otherwise. You know what I mean? And then lastly, Teddy Riley and Babyface. I thought that was really great. In terms of after verses, like making the playlist, because every versus battle I make a playlist. You can follow me on Apple Music, J Howell too. I make a playlist and rock out, and the most I've listened to on the versus playlist has been the Fred Hammond and Kirk Franklin, and then Babyface and Teddy Riley. Because obviously that I caught the back half of both of their primes. But I've always gone back and listened to the music, but not to the degree that I probably should have, and so that allowed me to do so. So I went through their whole catalogs and I built that. So I really enjoy that music there. And I'm excited to see what they do next, man. I think it's been a really big staple in the entertainment culture, man. I mean, I think it's been helping everybody get through the pandemic. I know it's been something I've looked forward to whenever they have announced it. So I'm gonna continue to look forward to it. So yeah, guys. This has been episode 2 of the SFG Sports Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to SFG Sports Pod on YouTube. Please follow me on Instagram, J_Howell2, and follow the SFG Sports Pod on Instagram. Just like I said, at SFG Sports Pod. We're at SFG Sports Pod on Twitter. At JHowell_2 on Twitter. On Sunday, we're going to have an exclusive YouTube for my Sunday NFL picks. So make sure you check that out. On our next pod, we're going to have some follow-up on the NFL weekend. The NBA, what's been going on there. We're going to talk about some of the things we're seeing in college football right now. How the Big Ten came back and what's going on there. What's going on with the NCAA in general. That's a whole nother conversation, man, because I think it's time we had a real conversation about the NCAA. And before I forget, lastly, so I want to give you guys an album of the week to check out. So my hip-hop fans will love this. It's called From a King to a God by Conway the Machine. A lot of classic hip-hop type bars on there. He's really rapping. He's really talking that talk. It's not the weirdo rap that we hear nowadays. So go ahead and check that out. And you know, whatever happens during the course of the week, we'll break that down and chop that up. So I thank y'all for listening, man. I appreciate it. Make sure you share it with a friend. I'm trying to grow this platform. Like I said before, I want to be able to build and include my people, and just start growing the platform. I think there's a absence of a voice of people in our that are like-minded like us in our age bracket, in the sports space and the entertainment space. And you know, I feel like, you know, we got a lot to offer. So again, man, welcome to the SFG Pod. I appreciate you guys for listening, and thanks for tapping into the journey. Remember, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And this has been your host, Jerry Howell, signing off.